Metroid Fusion was released back in 2002 for the Game Boy Advance. It was the first Metroid game to be released on the Game Boy Advance, and have created many staples for the series later on, such as the controls and the emphasis on lore. But with the heavy emphasis on lore and story, also came with a lot of limitation that forced this game to become more structured and linear compared to the older games from the franchise. Due to how very linear it is, the game doesn't really let you veer off the main path that the game wants you to follow. While there are multiple areas with different biomes, and you will be revisiting some existing areas, the map of the world is designed to be separated by sectors instead of one big underground labyrinth for you to play around with. Getting lost in the game is almost near impossible, as most of the time, the next path is usually within the sector. This wouldn't be an issue for other types of game, but Metroid is known for the Metroidvania gameplay. Because of how linear the game is, the map design itself is also kind of boring. Metroid Fusion really wants you to stay on the right path, and it is reflected through the advanced mechanics as well. In most of the Metroid games, the advanced controls or mechanics allow players to sequence break, but in Metroid Fusion, they are either stripped into inferior versions or outright removed. Wall jump will now always jump a set amount of distance away, making repeated wall jumps on the same wall impossible. Bomb jump is impossible after the first jump. In traditional Metroid, progression is usually locked away by an upgrade that you haven't collected yet, but in this game, it has a bunch of security locks that can only be bypassed by playing the story just to halt Samus from progressing into areas she's not meant to. Because of how much Fusion wanted to tell a story, it had to make sacrifices in making the player stay on the correct path. Unlike a lot of the older Metroid games, Fusion is a lot more straightforward with the storytelling, requiring Samus to stop at every navigation room just to have AI Adam to talk her ear off. Because of this direct approach, it also ditches a lot of storytelling through the environment, because there simply isn't any need to anymore. But the story is really good. Metroid Fusion is the 4th mainline game of Metroid, and is the 5th place in the story for the mainline games, being after Metroid Other M and before Metroid Dread. Upon starting the game and entering the main screen, instead of being greeted with the main theme with a happy sounding tune, Fusion gave you the main theme, but with a twist. The new theme really sets the tone of the game, doing away the jolly jingles and going for a much more slower and creepy feel for the main theme. It really sets the mood for the game, where it will be a more horror/thriller experience. The story starts with Samus receiving a job from the Galactic Federation to help out with the now Metroid-free planet, SR-388. Due to the extinction of the Metroids, this gave rise to a more primal and deadlier species, known as the X-Parasite. The X-Parasite can absorb any creatures and take on the form and memories of the creatures they consumed, making them extremely deadly, as no one can tell who's a friend or foe. We found out that the evil Metroids that Samus wiped out was actually a necessary evil to keep an even deadlier creature at bay, as the Metroids were designed to prey on the X-Parasites, but because the Metroids were wiped out, this allowed the X-Parasites to repopulate again. Samus got infected by the X-Parasite, but before it could affect her completely, a bunch of scientists administered a Metroid vaccine into her, giving her newfound abilities to absorb X-Parasites, while also sporting a new look. Though Samus is lucky to recover from that parasite, this isn't true for the BSL station. The BSL station is the gameplay world for Metroid Fusion. Samus is tasked to explore BSL station to stop the spread of the X-Parasite before it's too late, but along the way, bigger and badder versions of her are out to hunt Samus, known as SAX. We later on find out that there were at least 10 known in existence during the course of the playthrough, but you never get to meet them unfortunately. So with the new threat, Samus needs to recover her full power in order to even hope to stand against the SAX, but twists and turns happen along the way, because who we used to thought was our ally, now served to be our antagonist moving forward. The Galactic Federation repeatedly kept interfering with Samus to prevent her destroying the X-Parasite, the very same one who tasked Samus to wipe out the same said species, because now they see some sort of use for it, suggesting them as possible bioweapons, making the journey become all the more harder. Fusion really opened up the lore of the Metroid universe, giving us a different look of the Galactic Federation. What we thought was the justice of the Metroid universe turns out to not be so black and white anymore, and how we get to see Samus' range of emotions through her monologues and her interaction with AI Adam through cutscenes. Well, more like beautiful pixel screenshots, because the cutscenes in the game also does lack some diversity. Most of them are just close-up shots of Samus. The introduction cutscene is super banger though, and really sets the mood for the rest of the game, and the close-up on SAX's face gave me nightmares when I played this game for the first time when I was but a little child. Everything still holds up very well by today's standard. A lot of the music in the game is a lot more subtle and ambient compared to the older Metroid games, preferring to go for a more atmospheric tone rather than the bombastic adrenaline pumping song. But having said that, the game still features many classics such as Ridley's theme, and even having some of their own unique memorable music. As for the environment, as said earlier, the world is separated into multiple biomes, and while each one have gorgeous pixel graphics, unfortunately the biomes features the same old forest, lava and ice world, and just for good measure, there is also an underwater biome. There are some more unique places such as Sector 6 and the Restricted Zone. Unfortunately, the majority of the game is made up of the usual same repeated biomes. It also doesn't help that this game doesn't have as much set pieces around the map like the older games to make one place stand out more than the other. Samus in this game does look terrible in sprite, but it's not so much because of terrible spriting, but more of the suit just looking terrible in pixel form, and the colors used ain't that much better. Her iconic appearance with the orange Varia suit was done away due to the X-Parasite infection, and she gains a new fusion suit. Unfortunately, when translating the fusion suit into pixel sprites, it looks like a bunch of vomit on screen, especially the Varia fusion suit color scheme. I mean, just look at that! What is that green color? Moving on, controlling Samus is a different story. Yes, the controls are a bit limited due to the game being released on the Game Boy Advance, as you only have 2 face buttons on the right side of the controller and only have 1 set of shoulder buttons. But Metroid Fusion gameplay was designed so that combat and traversal of the world can all be easily achieved with the buttons available without sacrificing complexity. All upgrades you get along the way are added into the existing controls, making it like an extension to the controls you are already familiar with, but with more functionality, such as the missile upgrades are all added into the regular missiles. Instead of swapping between regular and super missiles, all regular missiles now become super missiles. Controlling Samus feels quick and snappy. Her movement responds with the right amount of movement and the speed when you input a direction, making controlling her feels really good. But if there is one complaint, it will be when she lands after her jump. It feels like whenever you land with Samus, all her momentum disappears and you're suddenly feeling the resistance. It's pretty jarring when you would be trying to jump over something, but the speed difference from air to ground suddenly drops, making traversing some dangerous terrain or dodging enemies annoying sometimes. This wouldn't be an issue if the enemies in this game doesn't hit like a truck, but the enemies do, so picking up health tanks feels more like a necessity than an option for those that are starting the game. The good thing though is that unlike other Metroid games, there is a large amount of health recovery pickups along the way due to the main enemy variety in this game being the X-Parasite, which Samus can now absorb for various benefits depending on the color, are littered everywhere in the game world as they can morph into any hostile enemies. The enemy and the boss variety are all very unique, making combat feel fresh and exciting, or extremely frustrating too. As you explore each new sector, the enemies at any moment can morph into stronger creatures or turn into something else. Each boss feels like they have carved out their own identities, with their own sets of attack patterns and weak spots. Definitely when it comes to combat, especially versing boss, this game is amongst the top for any Metroid game. Their appearance are no slouch either, with some of the game bosses truly looking magnificent, such as Neo Ridley X with the blue color palette, or Nightmare who is a melting face killer robot, and the Omega Metroid, which looks amazing in this game. But going back to the battles, the boss battles are a step up for the rest of the franchise. A lot of the bosses require some form of strategy, or require some refined maneuver to evade the boss attack and punish the boss. No longer are the days of shooting at a giant object, while evading some projectiles once in a while. Now the bosses actually make an attempt to change the battles up. You have Ceres, the long aquatic eel that goes super turbo the more you attack him. You have Yakuza, the spider boss that has the touch of death if you get caught by him, followed up with the second phase of Hot Potato. You have Nightmare who rendered your missiles semi-useless before zooming all around the room, and then you have Ridley. He's still as boring as ever to fight, but you can't have all winners. But even so, there are the ones mentioned before and also SAX fight, which is a fun one-on-one doppelganger fight. Shh, we don't talk about the second phase. And speaking of SAX, Metroid Fusion introduced an unkillable enemy who is bigger, stronger, and deadlier version of our playable character, Samus. The fact that you can't hurt the SAX gives you only one option: run. The introduction of the unkillable enemy created a tense moment of action to escape from the SAX vision, the feeling of helplessness where you can only either be patient, hiding away from the SAX, or run frantically away from the SAX, completely changing the pace of the game. These intense thriller moments is short and few, making them unpredictable in your first playthrough and will really catch you off guard, making you fearful and clench your buttocks on each encounter. Metroid Fusion does so many things right, with the things like the simple but yet responsive controls, fun boss fights, and even storytelling, but due to the restrictions placed on the game, it completely discouraged sequence breaking and exploration as a result, which is the spirit and identity of the genre, Metroidvania. But due to its linearity, it's perhaps a great starting point for newcomers who want to have a feel of the Metroidvania without having the hassle of being lost. They just have to get through enemies that put you on life support with each touch instead. Still, the game is a solid experience and it definitely shines the most with the first time playthrough, so I would easily recommend people to play this game if they haven't done so already. I could have a biased view for this game though, as this is my first Metroid game, and was my favourite until recently.